Welcome everybody to today's panel session focused on the topic of delivering value in our new ways of working. My name is Chris Orson and I head up the Ways of Working practice for HSBC's Market and Securities Services division. Securities Services is a global business that employs over 8,500 staff across 37 different countries. And we provide investor services to some of the world's largest asset managers, asset owners, banks and broker-dealers. Like many organisations, our ways of working story started actually as a DevOps journey within technology, focused on creating a more agile development process, as well as reducing breakages and promoting new architectural principles. And as the early benefits were starting to be seen, this coincided with the launch of an ambitious growth strategy by the senior leadership within the business. And many of the concepts and lessons learned during the early phases of the journey were brought into the business, and the new ways of working agenda was born and firmly rooted in transforming the change management process, coupling agile delivery techniques with DevOps improvements in tech. That was all going very well. Then COVID happened. And again, within many organisations, that the process, the people and the culture were all turned upside down. And we learned very, very quickly what true agility actually meant as we responded to our clients and our people's new ways of working. And to be honest with you, that's probably a discussion all in itself. Towards the end of 2020, as we started to imagine life beyond COVID, the ways of working practice moved to the COO function and took on the full front to back scope, leaning heavily on the lessons learned from the previous 15 months. So it essentially transformed out of being just a change management and technology delivery process and into a full front to back business sponsored activity. Our mission within Ways of Working is built upon three interconnected tracks of thinking. How we organise ourselves around value streams and move away from functional organisational design and the benefits we get from that. How we execute and deliver through these value streams. And lastly, how we operate by driving the right behaviours and cultures required to be successful. And we see all of these things as massively dependent on each other. Now, I might be slightly biased, but I actually believe we're making some great progress. And following that very brief whistle-stop tour of ways of working within security services, I'm delighted to be joined by three of our senior leaders who will be able to share their experience and insights, as well as their visions of the future. So I'll do some introductions. First up, we have Simon Hall. So Simon is the Global Technical Director for Digital and Data and one of the early sponsors and adopters of DevOps within our organisation. Next, we have Anna Luccock, who is the Global Head of People Experience for Markets and Security Services and a sponsor of many of our new culture initiatives that we're bringing out across the organisation. And lastly, but not no means least, we have James Chu, who is the Product Director for our Digital Transfer Agency business. So thank you all. Time to hear from you on this topic. So question one. We have started to see increased agility in the way we are delivering value. What do you think has changed to enable this? And I'm going to go to Simon first for that. So Simon, what do you think?
Thanks, Chris. I think, and you've heard this many a time, my number one thing is our technology architecture. I guess I would say that I'm a technology director. But what I mean is that we tend to, or historically, we've had very monolithic systems. And by monolithic, I mean, it might take 3 months to regression test a single change. So we don't do a single change. We do 3 months worth of change to balance it out to be more efficient, and maybe 3 months of analysis. And before you know it, a small change that we want to deliver for our client can take 9 months. And that's, I see that happening a lot. And I've seen that happening in many organizations up to HSBC. And one of the focuses that we've had is to say, well, okay, we've got to break this down into smaller pieces. To be agile, you've got to deliver small. You can't deliver in big things and have huge regression testing models. So a focus again within our area has been around data, because that's one of the big areas that really hasn't had much attention over the years. And when I mean data, and I think about data, we have an organization or an architecture of multiple core systems. 20, 30 of them. We have warehouses, marts, et cetera, where data's being moved to and designed for many use cases, with giant, potentially monolithic ETL processes that control that flow of data, with many teams owning each of these systems with lots of handoffs. which ultimately lasts in a lot of long lead times. So that chaining really is one of the root causes here, but also the size of each individual system. So what we've done over the last 3 years is build out what we're calling, or we're referring to, as a data mesh platform. And that really is about democratizing data, i.e. giving the power of data to those consumer applications that need that data. So it could be things like reporting, analytics, web pages, APIs, downstream sort of use cases, primarily for our clients and our internal operational teams. And that journey's been tough because it's been brand new. It's a completely new way of working. But really, the primary thing that's driving us is time to market. And we've managed to demonstrate, end-to-end delivery, delivering real business value within a couple of weeks, which has clearly wowed our business. They got very interested. That's helped funding, and it's been a virtuous circle as we've grown and grown and grown. I think that 2-week delivery period is really showing the ability of tight feedback loops. Is that we can do experimentation. We could never, a POC, can sometimes mean 9 months, not a couple of weeks, just to try something out. So yeah, I think in summary, really is, from my perspective, it's that architecture enablement, especially around data, that we've been on that journey with recently. It's enabling us really to think big but deliver small, and I think that's ultimately one of the main things that we've done in the last 2 or 3 years.
And Chris, if I could jump in there, I think the new technology, and particularly the data mesh, Simon talked about how we're delivering small things and delivering frequently, and that really obviously suits the new way of working and the new methods that we're looking at. But it also allows us to get something in front of a client really quickly. We can build something that's multi-product, that's multi-client. We can join data from our accounting function and our transfer agency function together and put something in terms of a product in front of a client within, as Simon said, weeks, not months. And really, I think at the crux of it, we're able to get the requirement closer to the end user. So we're able to get developers much closer to the problem being solved. We don't just have our developers speaking to our internal operations teams or the requirements gathering internally, but we actually now have developers on calls with clients. So they're hearing from the client firsthand what the business challenge is. They're presenting back what they've built to the client, and they're hearing feedback directly from the people who are going to be using it day to day once the solution is fully deployed. And that tightening of the feedback loop and bringing it so much closer together, I think is just really accelerating our builds and allowing the improved user experience for the client to be at the forefront of the developer's mind the whole way through the process.
So, and I'll just jump in here, slight change of tack, but building on what James and Simon have been talking about. From my perspective, there's been a massive recognition of the leadership behaviours and the culture that's required for this type of empowerment, enablement that Simon and James have just been mentioning. The tone from the very top has shown a massive shift as we look to really become the bank that we need to be fit for the future. So over the past couple of years, we've really invested in our leaders so that our leaders can both be the leaders that we need them to be as an organisation, but also the leaders that our people need them to be as well. We want leaders who are authentic, true to themselves, and create that psychological safety for this type of way of working that we're describing. But we also want leaders who can inspire, create clarity, give clear direction, and empower people to be really decisive. So how we've really been doing this is that we've been trying to provide leaders with toolkits to be able to do this, to actually try and teach our leaders. We have realised that we have to provide toolkits and some teaching around this. It doesn't come naturally to everybody. And moved away from that sort of process-driven management style and leadership style into more of a coaching, mentoring, and perhaps what some people call sort of servant leadership style. So a really good example is some teaching around how to lead through times of change, really important. Drawing on things like Pink's motivation theory, if anyone's familiar with that, where you can really create a high-performing culture through a focus on autonomy, mastery, and purpose.
Yeah, and I think Sorry, go for it, Simon. No, go for it.
I was just going to pick up on the word autonomy, and psychological safety from Anna, because I think that's been really important. So, as we're building small things, teams can own these things end to end. We have producers, we have consumers, but ultimately you can have autonomy on those things you own pretty much end to end. And that drives a lot of interesting outcomes too, where it's not just about delivering things fast. That's obviously one major thing there. But it just is much easier. There aren't these handoffs, these wait times, these frustrations, the stresses that go with it from those teams that really want to deliver. But also it frees them up to innovate. We see a lot more ground up innovation now where teams are coming up with really, really cool ideas that might be very small, and they might have very small outcomes, but there's some very big things as well that I could probably speak for hours and I won't, but there are many things that have come up from this.
Yeah, and I think that's actually the critical point, isn't it? And it's tying all these threads together, right? So the leadership style and that willingness and ability to empower is what's key, right? Because that empowerment enables the teams which want to work in a better way to actually start really embracing these new ways of working. And I think James's reference there to sort of the client seeing that actually come to life in reality is then sort of completes the virtuous circle, because you're now able to show how sort of experimentation and sort of investigative stuff and sort of that creative side of particularly within technology space is adding real business value, and it's not just a nice to have activity or something that's something that we do on the side. It's a core part of how we develop and deliver solutions to our clients.
Yeah, and the key point of that feedback loop is working software. So if we're experimenting, we're actually demonstrating something working. If we're working with a client, then a week, 2 weeks later, we can show them what we've implemented. It's hugely powerful.
Absolutely. James, do you think there's anything else that may be contributing to this?
Yeah, I think one of the key things that we've been looking at, obviously we've talked about the autonomy there and the importance of the end-to-end ownership, and bringing the client along the journey end to end as well, I think has really added a huge amount of value for us. So if we look at how historically we may have designed things inside out, we're now looking a lot more outside in, seeing the importance of the end user experience, and as we talked about, having the developer spend time with the end user. It allows our people to be more bought in. So they have a relationship with the person who's going to be using the tool in the end. They've spoken to them, they understand their needs a bit more. It allows them to be focused on the more strategic solution. And I think it brings them more of a desire to do the right thing for that person. And it aligns then from our perspective to the overall product vision, and they're focused on bringing that change to life for the end user. In transfer agency, in the area that I work within, we look after the client's client. So we're speaking to someone and we're building something, and we're building technology for their clients to use, not just themselves. And we work with them, and we have been working with them on the new tools we've been developing, and making it a really collaborative process. And I think what that does in an agile environment where historically you've been used to working left to right effectively on a plan, and you have a target date and you have milestones by certain dates. In an agile environment, being very collaborative builds some certainty. It builds trust. It removes the lack of transparency. If something needs to move, they understand that the reason the date is moving is because of something that, you've had an opportunity to build something a different way that might be slightly better, or this problem has come up that we need to work through collaboratively, but they're involved in the process. And I think what that does is it removes some of the problems, or it's removed some of the problems that we've seen with that, where agile on one side and waterfall on the other can be a more difficult environment to work in. If the client's on the journey with you, they get to see the benefits of agile delivery. They're seeing those deliveries every couple of weeks. They're seeing and feeding back. And really, it actually builds a bit of a bond, more of a bond with the client. and which is obviously great for us. It's what we want to do. We want to get closer to our clients, but it also gets us then closer, as we said, to that end user experience as well. So I think it's quite a holistic journey with the client on this. I think that's really something that we've been focusing on in recent times, I think, which has made a huge difference to the way we approach these things.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think you've raised a really critical point there, which is that collaborative journey. And I think that trust relationship that you build, and it's not just with clients, it's also that relationship, I think, with leaders and their teams as well. And Anna, you called it out earlier on about moving away from sort of process-based management into servant leadership or coaching leadership styles, which is something we've talked about doing for a while. But I think maybe this, from my perspective, maybe this sort of acceleration in the ways of working that was brought on largely, actually, or accelerated certainly by the last sort of 15 months experience, where sort of virtual leadership and autonomy and empowerment were essential things for us to deliver to our teams and to enable them to work over the last 15 months, has really come to the fore. Thinking a little bit about some of the challenges that we've had as well in this space, is there anything that you think we want to sort of call out that just sort of talks to some of the things we've had to overcome as we've gone on this journey? Because it's obviously not all been a bed of roses.
I think from my perspective, in a way, the technology that we're moving to is almost the easy part. It's actually people and their ways of working and their how they've learned to operate over the last, in my case, 30 odd years, and can you change? And that change can be very, very difficult for some people. They see their value on a day-to-day basis, and changing that is quite daunting. I think, especially in the early days of some of the things we were doing, partnering with people, teams that really wanted to change. They maybe saw the vision very quickly and really bought into their own context, and having people that are very willing to change made it a lot easier. And we tried to focus on teams as much as we could in that space, because it's teams or people at the other end of that scale that don't want to change. It's hard. It's really hard. So really, it's more about focusing on people that want to change. Then over time, that becomes seen as a good thing. There's examples. It's not just some presentation or whatever we've given, and it makes it easier then for the people that don't want to change. Initially, they start buying into the story, starting to see the value because they can see it. So I think that would be one lesson that is still today even tough. That's not gone away. Yeah. It can be tough at times.
Yeah. No.
Yeah, but I think we have to support people. There's been recognition that we have to support people with that change. I should say change comes more naturally to some people than others. And last year, HSBC launched an initiative. I won't call it a program. It's an initiative called Future Skills. In recognition that over sort of half of the core learned skills and capabilities that we have will have to change for the future way that we're going to be working and the way that the world is moving. And that's huge. Again, that needs a massive cultural mindset and a different approach to learning. Just because you've always done something some way is not a reason to keep doing it. We need to encourage people to sort of embrace that change. And as I say, Future Skills is about a changing mindsets and cultures, not just sending people on sort of programs and education sessions for an hour here or there. So it's a big ask, as Simon mentioned. It's about empowering everyone. So this isn't now just about leaders, but this is about empowering everybody to want to learn, connect with people and grow. And so some of the core capabilities that we're talking about there range from digital technical capabilities and skills that people are going to need, all the way through, I suppose, to growth mindset that can do, will do attitude, which again does come more naturally to some over others. So it's a challenge to get people to embrace that, and I suppose that won't change overnight, but it's something, if we keep talking about it, we keep the pressure on, and again keep the sort of connection to the broader community in which we operate. So it's not just about the job you do day to day, it's about the world as well, and in which we live, and the community in which we live. I think that helps people understand, I suppose how big this is for everybody.
Yeah, and I think, I think you raised some really good points there, Anna, and I think it's the scale of the change is significant, and we, I think, understand how hard it is to try and shift organisations that have got such a strong tradition and legacy, and are so integrated actually into the communities that they operate in. How hard it is to try and shift some of those ways of thinking. From my perspective, I definitely have seen that tone from the top and that sponsorship starting to shift, and I think that's fundamentally critical if we're going to be successful as we continue to push this stuff further forward. I just wanted to pick up because we've obviously taken a very internal sort of view of that transformation around what it means for our teams, what it means for our people, and but from a client perspective, and I guess James, you're probably closest to this. Are you seeing sort of a willingness or a demand from clients to start operating differently?
Oh, absolutely. Like, I think it's particularly over the last 15 months and with COVID, we've gone from, so our business in transfer agency is a very people-centric, people-heavy process. So we're dealing with investors in our clients' funds. So we're the administrator, but we're talking to their investors on a daily basis. And we as I say, process heavy, people heavy, and we're still getting paper in the post. We're getting checks in the post. There's faxes going left, right, and centre. So we're topping and tailing this conversation, talking about our data mesh, and we're still receiving faxes at the end of the day. So it's a very mixed technology bag, but that's just the industry, unfortunately, that we're in. And clients are really calling out for new ways of operating, new ways of working. We're deploying some of the digital solutions that we've been building based on the mesh and using the mesh as the core to try and ease our clients' processes. So allowing them to self-serve. We have platforms in place where they can go in, they can run reports, they can, there's API connectivity there. The new technology that we've built has allowed our clients to use that. But I guess the core of that is really digital and self-service, and those are some of the things that we're really focused on. But what can be great about self-service, it's not just an opportunity, as you mentioned, internally for us to make our lives easier. We can actually make our clients' lives a lot easier. So having APIs into their system to use, from an investor perspective, allowing them to make the change to their address themselves and post it online and have it feed through to us, rather than having to write us a letter, or rather than having to ring someone to make an update. And all of this combines to make a far more efficient model for us, a far more efficient model for the client, and it removes some of the problems that we've seen with, we have however many people working from home that were all in an office collaborating previously. So it's really brought a much more streamlined model to our clients, and actually probably an improved service to their investors through just the new capabilities, new ways of working, and new ways of delivering.
And I'm going to just so extend that slightly as well and bring Simon into this, because from a technology point of view, how much do you think that the last 15 months has sort of accelerated that demand from not only the business, but also that we're putting onto our suppliers as well, around adopting these new architectural principles you talked about at the start? Because actually we're recognizing that we're working in a new way now, and this is a new environment that we're in.
Well, first off, we started our journey in terms of architectural change internally on internal infrastructure, and we're certainly moving now to external cloud, whereas our platform can operate on any vendor. It doesn't have to be not just one. I think something we're doing from a technology perspective as well is, it's a lot more open source. We're creating a lot more of an internal open source collaborative working model that all people can contribute to our platforms. That's something we're definitely pushing, is that whole platform self-service thinking, both internally for technology teams, internally for operational teams, and then, as James said, externally for our clients too. So there's lots of thinking and lots of things happening in that space. There's a lot going on in every sort of area, Chris. It's huge, and it's quite scary at times. Just the other day, we were exploring, because we can now, we're getting more and more access to our enterprise data. We were exploring using one of the vendors is machine learning stacks. whereas before we'd move the data to the stack and do some machine learning, we're now bringing the processing to our data and doing it on our data. So it's a subtle difference, but it's huge internally in terms of how we operate and how we think.
Yeah. And before we get into sort of the last question I wanted to ask, I did want to sort of bring up the topic of sort of sustainability as well in all of this, because I think there's a big angle on that, and I think the sustainable nature of future ways of working and people's drive to be flexible and also thinking more about the wider environment that they operate in. I just wanted to get your thoughts really on sort of collectively the direction of travel in terms of sustainability as a major pillar for what success looks like. Anna, I don't know if you've got a view on that from a sort of a people point of view.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I sort of referenced it before, but, you know, this type of culture change and the skills that people are going to be needing sort of in the sort of very near to medium to longer term is incredible. I think there's a stat that globally over 2 billion people need to upskill and learn new skills and capabilities for the future way of working. Obviously, that 2 billion isn't all HSBC. So I think HSBC has a massive sort of social and sustainable responsibility, that it has to take responsibility to support the communities in which we work and which we operate. As you say, HSBC is very connected to the communities, being such a global company. And I suppose we have to not just think about this, I suppose, once we feel like we're done. We have to bring people along with us on the journey and support others around us as much as possible with the learning. So what we're finding, what we're learning, how can we share that learning? You know, whether it's as simple as, you know, for example, going into schools, growth mindset, how do we get people to really embrace the new skills that businesses are going to need? All the way through, I suppose, to Simon, perhaps handing across to yourself or James, you know, the more technical side of the sustainable infrastructure that we need.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that came to mind when you asked that, Chris, was you probably remember this from a couple of years ago, where when we were setting a vision out for what we were trying to do with data, we put together a simple slide that was just showing the cost of internal infrastructure, on-prem infrastructure. Then we were doing virtual machines on-prem, and then we were moving to ultimately external cloud. And for these 20 servers or whatever we were putting together, it was about a $2 million US a year run cost, you know, just infrastructure costs, not operating costs. And we sort of worked it out to be about $400,000 or $500,000 on internal VMs. And then actually, when you make use of the cloud, are you not lifting and shifting to the cloud, you're genuinely making use of the features on the cloud, serverless, whatever it might be, we were coming up with about $60,000 to $70,000 a year. So that was very striking and got people's attention.
I remember the slide, it was gold dust.
I'm sure you do, yes. So, and actually, it's really funny because literally last week, I saw that again because we were doing some other work. And actually, it's not far off from truth. That is the scale of the change, you know. So that's just dollars, but of course, those dollars turn into energy, et cetera, et cetera. You know, it requires energy to run these servers, and we're reducing our footprint massively. In my view, I think it's a really positive story.
Absolutely.
And just to jump in on that as well, like if you think about our environmental impact, as I mentioned, within transfer agency, we're still getting checks in the post, and we're still getting letters, and we send out letters and contract notes and statements. And a big part of what we've been working on and continue to work on is tools and digital tools and apps for investors to use. So to make it a fully self-service, like I was talking about before, fully self-service experience and a digital experience, that removes the need for paper. And the more paper we reduce our usage of, the better it is for the environment. And that absolutely is forefront in our thinking with some of these tools that we're building.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much. So yeah, I'm going to sort of tail off now, and I'm going to ask a bit of a visionary question to everybody. So I'll give you a couple of minutes each just to sort of talk you through, but for you to talk us through. But essentially, I think we've had an encouraging start. I think we're still at base camp, and I think there's a mountain ahead of us to climb. So I'm very interested to know what you think the view from the top looks like. So once we've scaled Mount Everest, what are we looking at? So Anna, over to you first from a people experience point of view.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree, Chris. I think, personally very pleased with the progress that we've made so far around culture change. But I think we have to recognise that this is a sort of more of a marathon. Culture does not change overnight to really embed those changed behaviours. So we really need to keep going with this. So absolutely agree. I think great progress, not done yet. I suppose once we're there, what does it look, and I suppose more importantly from my perspective, what does it feel like to be part of the organisation? I suppose it's somewhere where, where everyone really enjoys coming to work, collaborate with colleagues internally, with customers externally, so that we really do succeed together. Somewhere where people can really, I suppose, fuel that curiosity to learn and grow, as I've mentioned before, where people can innovate, feel and be dynamic. Learn from mistakes. Not everyone's going to be perfect. So I know we talk about learn from mistakes, fail fast, move on. And I suppose the real key for me is back to where I think we started, was that context of psychological safety, where each and every person has a place in the organisation, can speak up, and we really value the difference of the types of people that we have in the organisation. But I think if we can create that psychological safety as leaders or as team members, I think that is going to really set us up for success in the future.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, Anna. James, from your point of view.
I think it's really for me, it's about the client seeing it and believing it and understanding it. And it's right now we've been delivering in this method for a little while now, and we're starting to see that. So the client has seen, you engaged with us starting on a project 9 months ago, and you've delivered something which previously might have taken a couple of years in that 9-month period, and you delivered it on time. And that is them understanding the capabilities and seeing the capabilities. It's building that out. So I mentioned before, multi-client, multi-product. The tools that we're building and the capabilities that we're working on are generic. We're not looking to just build something for one client. So we can only bring a certain number of clients along the journey with us. But the benefit for the others is they see, all of a sudden when we reach out and say, okay, well, we've built this new tool, would you like to see it? And it's ready to go. It's the ability to onboard them then onto that quite quickly, and then take their feedback on it and add new features and new capabilities quite quickly as well. So to continue to have an iterative agile delivery approach and new features and new capabilities, which all clients will benefit from, rather than just single client focused approach, and really just that breadth of experience and breadth of client needs. And there'll be things that we'll build for one client as a result of the feedback of one client that all clients will benefit from, and they mightn't have thought from themselves. So really it's continuing the journey and just allowing our clients to see the evidence of the delivery and to be able to benefit from the experience.
Yeah, being very, very, very visible with it. And Simon, from a technology perspective.
I'll keep it in the data space, otherwise I could talk for hours. Hey, look, lots more of the same. I think the journey we're already on and that vision we have, there's lots of work to do still. That still plows on. I think obviously, it's cloud. It just becomes more and more cloud based systems and et cetera, et cetera. I think at the moment today, we really classify data into two planes. We have that operational data that's tightly coupled with those operational systems, and we have what we've described today as around downstream publishing, analytics, all those sort of things. And that's where we're getting real value today. But I think the data underpinning that becomes one eventually. I don't know when that's going to be, but I don't think there will be that difference in the future, which I think will help us become even more agile in our way of working. I think also, and I can't even tell you what the vision is, outside of the buzzwords that are out there at the moment, but using data, in terms of AI, et cetera, et cetera. There is going to be a lot of opportunity out there in the future for all of us, for our clients, what we can sell, and we show ourselves, analytics we can do on our own data, to again, help our clients in the future. So I think there's massive opportunity out there.
Absolutely. And I think, just sort of wrapping up there, I think, the cultural shift that we're going through at the moment is significant, and it feels very live. And we're on the start of that journey, and it's great for us to be able to start imagining what that awesome organisation is starting to look like. And there's some green shoots coming through and some really sort of great behaviours and things that we should be role modelling right now, and I think we are. I think it's great as well to hear that the clients are driving demand on this as well. So this isn't something that we are pushing. This is something that's being we're pushing an open door to many respects. This is being gratefully received. And I think if we can move to that point where we're able to engage with clients in a much more collaborative rather than combative way when we're getting through that delivery and implementation phase, particularly of large projects or large pieces of work, that'd be a fantastic outcome. And then the technology is an underpinning enabler is absolutely there, and there's a lot of challenge that I think particularly cloud had early on around sort of security, risk and security and all that kind of stuff, which is still there in the background. But what's great to see is that we're being sort of enthusiastic and determined to overcome those issues, to make this stuff come to life for us, because once we get it in, the benefits are huge. So look, thank you very much, guys, for your time this morning. I think it's been very insightful. I think it's been very interesting as well to hear, particularly from the different dimensions. So we've got a technology angle, we've got a client and front office business angle, and we've also got that sort of people angle as well. I think they're all key components of what successful future ways of working looks like, and are certainly front and centre of the way in which we're thinking about new ways of working at Security Services at HSBC. So I'd like to thank you again, and I will now open up to any questions. So thank you very much.